Welcome to Unscripted Live. I have no idea what I'm going to say, so it's going to be just as much a surprise to me as it is to you. I don't have any prepared notes because I don't work that way. I'm very top of mind. Sometimes I might pause for a second because I've got a lot of synapses firing, most of them not correctly. But we'll just talk for a few minutes. I say a few minutes. I don't want to misrepresent myself. Sometimes I go on too long. We'll talk for quite a while, or however long, and then there's a microphone right here, and we'll just take every question you have. I'm not going to shy away from anything, because that's what you're paying dues for, to find out how you're being represented. So I asked Siri this morning, I said, how many days has it been since January 1st, 2023? And it's 926. So we're in day 926 of the 482BC hostage crisis. January bid month of 23 is when the PSIT and Marty's group started tracking the sand, and they started seeing that it was starting to go in a downward vector. And it's continued. And now we are where we are. And what they've done and continue to do is completely, it's wrong. It is absolutely wrong. You know, we were at the table June 24th, 25th. I asked their negotiating committee, a member of their committee, are we still 700 pilots? How many pilots we overmanned? Still 700. So this has been going on. We've attrited, I don't know how many hundreds of pilots since January of 23, and we're still 700. That, to me, that's not even believable. In fact, it's disingenuous. I think everybody should go on Facebook today and put the little blue flag and mark themselves safe from furlough. Right? They were never going to furlough. So this is the issue where we're at. And I'm going to talk about everything, but you got to understand this. If you're happy with the schedules we're flying right now, and you'll be happy doing that for the rest of your career, that's fine. Let your reps know. And we'll abandon what we're trying to do with regards to revisions and extensions and reserve and everything else. But if you're not fine, then we've got to stay engaged on them. Because it's like Dennis Green said when he was coaching for the Cardinals, they are who we thought they were. They're going to continue this behavior for the rest of your career. Why? Because they figured out how to do it. I don't know if they have AI, I don't know if they perfected it during COVID, but they know how to do it. They know how to take what was normally historical levels of reserve staffing, like in the triple and every other airplane, and now have taken it way, way low, and they're banking on revisions and extensions and overtime to bail them out of their jam. If that's how everybody wants to spend the rest of their career here flying nights, because there's not a whole lot of day flying anymore, then we're okay with that. Wouldn't be my personal choice, but we work for the MEC who works for you, and that's what you guys want to do, we'll do that. But if you want us to step back and continue to fight to beat that back, we're happy to do that. We think that's what needs to happen. So it's been a long slog to where we are right now. It happened from way back in the fall of 23 when the NMB thought that we only needed a few things to fix this situation here in Memphis. But there's been a lot of things that have happened and transpired, right? They shut down Cologne, they shut down Los Angeles, they shut down the Anchorage MD-11 base, they went into drive, all sorts of things. Just think about this. During ratification in the summer of 23, was anybody really concerned about belly freight? No. Because the Orange Network, or in the yellow or in the white or whatever colors they are, they didn't get really rolled out till late fall of 2023, December of 23, right? So we have a huge issue that wasn't even on the radar when y'all voted on the last TA. It was what they're doing with belly freight, where, you know, from our standpoint, it could be, it becomes an alternative transportation system, and unfortunately it doesn't involve anybody sitting in this room. That's a problem. Now, when we go talk to them on scope, we're very clear about that. We're not here to inhibit their ability to grow. And I will tell you, I see people in here that have been here as long as I have and longer. I'm in my 30th year. The way that scope was normally been applied here, because when I've sat at the bargaining table before, is that they would use a feeder on a lane segment, like I'll pick a city, it would be the incorrect one, but like from Subic to Hanoi. They ran some kind of turboprop, and eventually they got to 2 turboprops, and then eventually, they can go put an A310 on there. That's how they used the scope clause in the past. I would submit to you, by anybody who knows who shows up on the ramp in Charles de Gaulle right now, that's not how the scope clause is going down now. And that's how it's going to continue to go. Now, there are things, point to point that doesn't touch the definition of international or scope. We're not going to get up here and make any promises that we can stop them by, wet leasing or whatever, like from Hong Kong to Dubai, because that's not the international definition. And the companies made themselves very clear that they have no intention of bargaining over issues that are, in that case, outside the RLA's extraterritorial jurisdiction, even though they don't have a problem with it over at UPS. So we understand that constraint, and what that means is, let's just be very clear about it, because I might as well touch on another subject. There are certain subjects that are not mandatory subjects of bargaining. I just told you one of them, which is the point-to-point. That doesn't touch, the U.S. or its territories. The other one is like people who have unfortunately retired since the amendable date. Despite my personal feelings, and what I would like to do, and is the way that is viewed in the RLA is once a person retires, they're not part of the class and craft. So as such, it's not an RLA mandatory subject of bargaining, which means that if we want to approach the company and bargain over it, they can just say no. And if we were to bargain on it, you can't bargain over to an impasse over those issues. So one of the unfortunate aspects of my job sometimes is just having to tell you the truth, and that it's not all unicorns and rainbows as people would hope it to be. But that's a very overt truth about with retirees. Does that mean we're not going to do something? That's not my call. That's the MEC's call. I have strong personal feelings about that. I've been here 30 years. I'm seeing a lot of my friends retire, right? And it's unfortunate what's happened, and I'm going to tell you, it's when you don't have a willing partner to bargain, that makes things very difficult. And I'll probably start getting wound up here, and you're going to see the attorneys over there start mainlining Nexium and baby aspirin. But, we'll just talk about retirement. The company maintains that what they have on the table is industry leading. So, let me back up a step further and go at with this with you. Yes, we had our session truncated, right? Most likely, there was an appreciation for the pay proposal that we had for our pay proposal. We're not apologizing for our pay proposal. We think it's very in line with what's going on out there. And I'll give you a news flash right now. Last night, the IPA just presented their pay proposal in bargaining. For those of you who don't know, it's in their contract, if the IPA and UPS management don't arrive at a tentative agreement by September 1st, they have to go to mediation. And you got to know, because we've gone to the IPA, we went and saw them last January or February, Jose, all of us. If I was an IPA guy and UPS management and saw what our experience has been going through mediation, they might think twice about whether or not they really want to go through mediation. UPS management would, I'm just hypothetically speaking because I've seen it happen in the past, they'd like to exploit and capitalize on the fact that we don't have a contract. In 1997, when I was an Airbus FO, the IPA honored the Teamster strike at UPS. And FedEx stepped in and told people like, I could have the companies wrong, but big shippers like LL Beam, hey, we'll take your freight, but you got to sign a 5-year deal with us. So they take advantage of that. I've always said the company will make a deal what's in their best interest to get a deal. In 2006, when we were bargaining in mediation up in Washington, the IPA and UPS were on short final to get a deal, and all of a sudden we got a deal. So we're not bargaining in a vacuum. I'm not, my committee, our committee, the MEC, we're not relying on the IPA to do our heavy lifting, but it's called pattern bargaining for a reason. I'm not saying we're not going to continue to bargain. That would be stupid if we just folded our arms and just sat here and watched what happened. That's not the charges. The people from the NMB, the person in particular, told me to go back, talk to the MEC, work some things out, and then to give him a call. We're not iced, we're not parked, because I'm the one that gets to initiate the contact with the NMB. It wasn't, don't call us, we'll call you. And hopefully things will be different. We've been going through mediators like I've gone through ex-wives. Now, my third one stuck with me for 34 years, so I've got a good feeling about whoever this is going to be next. I was a bit of a knucklehead in my 20s after spending my sexual peak at the Air Force Academy, okay? We have a compelling story to tell. We'll tell it again to the NMB. Our issue's not with the NMB. I've been through mediation. This is my third time through mediation, 1998, 2006, and this. I respect the NMB. I respect their decision. We have to abide by their decision. But in the end, my responsibility, Steve, Alan, Tom, Chris's, the MEC, my support staff, our responsibility is with you all. Because I could go in there and just open up our pockets and go, all right, we took 950 million or so off last time. That didn't do the trick. Here's another $500 million or $750 million. And what if that doesn't get us a seat at the table? And now we've anchored ourselves so low. And why it might appease the NMB, it's not going to pass the MEC, and it certainly wouldn't pass with you guys and girls. We answer to you. And it's not an easy thing to do. You know, you take pot shots when you take this job. I've read the stuff on the internet. Oh, he's got cognitive decline. He can't put two words together. The only time I've had cognitive decline was I agreed to take this damn job, right? I can go back and fly. I'd love to go back and fly. I could probably outdo the FMS and half the people in this room. I know how to exit hold still. I haven't lost a step in that regard. And we're willing to fight on your behalf. If you want us to fight on your behalf, we're going to continue to fight on your behalf. If you want to continue to go through these schedules that you're going to have for the rest of your career, unless we change them, that's what's going to happen. So they came out of, I got sidetracked, which I often do, but back to retirement. The company thinks that their retirement is industry leading because it's 11% market-based cap, market-based plan capped at the compensation limit, and of course they didn't touch the DC. So 18%, but it's all capped. That was what's in the TA, but what they've got on the TA, the table is actually less than TA because it only has a 330 FAE cap. Twice now they've told us, maybe 3 times at the table, we think this is industry leading, and if that doesn't get it done, I don't know what does. Well, like Jose mentioned, you're sick of polling. We don't rely on polling. This is not a tail wagging the dog thing, but we use 360 degrees of data. We get feedback from the NMB, feedback from the company, feedback from y'all talking one-on-one, phone calls, darts, feedback from our comparator like at UPS, like I just mentioned to you. And we're just using the surveying and the polling to make sure, that was a bomber, dude, that I got the cross-track, the drift nailed, and we're IPM bound on the target. What they've done is brought no new money. They have completely reconfigured just the TA. If you want to call it the rearrangement of the deck chairs on the Titanic, that's a great euphemism. Not only have they brought no new money, they bought, I would argue, less money, right? Because the retirement is less. Alan is on our committee, negotiated a frontier Alan's a 3-year FO on the MD-11. The TA had a 22% pay raise. What they put across on the table when they were reluctantly compelled to do it, I mean, the mediator wasn't reluctant to compel them. They were loath to wanting to produce that pay rate because they knew this was going to tick you all off because they anchored so low. They knew when they sent that pay rate at 416.09, and it came at the expense of block over 8 and block over 10. So for those of you who haven't been here quite as long as I have, we've had block over 10 in our pay calculations since prior to having a union on the property. It was in the FCH, the Flight Crew Members Handbook. And 68% of our system runs off a trip rig. And it's all, but on the legs with the block over 10, that's baked into the trip rig. The block over 8, I was in the room on the last day in 2006 in the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C., myself, Bob Kameny, Bruce Cheever, Don Maliniak. We had gone through we did a 31-section rewrite in 2006. And what had happened, I got to rewind a little bit further back. When I first came to work here, we were on a 7-hour day. We were on a trip rig of 1 to 3.43. But our pay rates were really suppressed because we were on a 7-hour day. So they said in the FPA days, you guys want to have a 7-hour day, or if you want your pay rates more in line with the industry, we'll do that, and then we'll give you a pay raise on top of that. That was it was about a 15.66% adjustment. That's what the FPA chose. You'll hear the term, the old timers will talk about cost neutral, which really means we took it in the shorts, because what happened was you went from a 1 to 3.43 trick rig to 1 to 4.0. So it used to be like when I was negotiating back then, Kameny was a very senior MD-11 captain, 1979 hire. He flew Paris or Stansted. That's what all the senior Memphis guys did. And the minute we went to 1.4, the 2-day Stansted trip that paid on the sum of the block now became a 3-day trip because it was cheaper to keep them in the field a day and was pay the same and then have them come back. And they had in-the-field reserves over in Europe. So we went through a whole exercise, for those of you who remember, about the definition of work and the gold standard, and that we wanted pilots to be able to max out their retirement in 2006 without having to sell back their vacation and draft, the wide-body captain. So that was all part of that. And part of that negotiation was, because when you're on 1 to 4.0, you're essentially salaried. So the Airbus captain that was flying to Calgary or Vancouver was making the same amount of money as the MD-11 guy that just drug his butt all the way around the world and did the VOR through the thunderstorms, belly up to the mountain, rolling out on final in Subic, right? They got paid the same. And so we said we wanted to capture that flying done. So we ended up, that's how we got block over 8. Back then, what Bruce and the company said was, we're going to give you block over 8, but we don't want to put it in the trip guarantee because it'll require for us to have more pilots. But we'll do it for you, but you guys fly it, then you'll get paid for that. So now they've offered a pay raise that was 2% more than what was in the TA. But it came at the expense of block over 8 and 10. We had our big brain dudes that looked at it from a MD-11, 777, and maybe a little bit on the 7.6, because the 7.6 does block over 8. That takes the 416.09 or whatever that number is, pay rate, down to effective rate about 404 for the 777 people. That's what that does, right? Now, here's the other part that somehow didn't find it into their little negotiating update that they wrote within hours after we exited out of the NNB. Again, I was talking about Alan. Alan's very good with numbers. Alan's a 3-year MD-11 FO. One of the things they slid across the table with their pay proposal was this chart. Their chart is that they wanted to readjust the slope of the ratio of how FOs are paid to captains. They actually think you might be a little bit overpaid compared to other properties. So they came up with this chart about what the ratio should be. Alan took out his calculator, looked at what the TA pay rate was, took the 24% pay rate, applied the chart, and he came up like $2 less. I'm sorry, $5 less. Thanks, Alan. There's your pay rate. There's your pay raise. Another guy that helps us out, it's like a 6 or 7 year Airbus FO, he got like a $2 pay raise. Right? So they brought no new money. Now, they haven't felt they've had a need to bring any new money. But that's how they're operating, right? They haven't done in retirement, they haven't done in pay. We did take $950 million off, and it came in the form of, we abandoned fixing the trip rig to 1 to 3.5 and an adjustment in retirement. We had been holding on to the trip rig because, like I told you earlier, we're a trip rig dominated airline. And we thought, well, if they come in really low, then we need to have the trip rig to deal with that. But we understand that this has gone on way too long and we need to get a deal. 416 or whatever that number is way too low. And I've always been a proponent of, it's your W-2, it's not the, there is a hyper focus on the hourly rate. Let's not kid ourselves. Everybody, when they get the contract, they go right to Section 3, go to the pay table and go, And it's either thumbs up, and if it's or thumbs down, then you're going to have a hard time with the rest of the contract. But you need to look at your W-2, which is a function of how you get paid and everything. But if you're going to go then and fix the trip rig, then you probably got to fix how much money is going to get deposited in your vacation bank every year and how much is going to get put in your sick bank if you want to be truly holistic about it. But we thought that was not, we were wanting to get to deal, so we just let that go, right? That's part of it, right? The trip rig is certainly part of compensation. Yeah, so we came off $1, and rightly so. So we're at Delta +6. You're actually at Delta United and American +6 right now. I'll just say I have no idea what the IPA just put on the table yesterday, but I know historically we've seen the charts in the past. The IPA is a very put together, well-run union, and they have historically done very well in pay, even on the single pay rate. And once you deconstruct it and make it match ours or the industry, they have historically done very well. And I wouldn't assume that they're going to do poorly this time. I also wouldn't assume that they're going to sunset their pension. They found a way that works well for them, has since 2006, where they have their pension formula, and then they have a thing called a flat dollar that applies to those pilots that are going to retire during the course of the contract, and it greatly reduces, if the PBO, the projected benefit obligation, is up here, like in ours, that the IPA UPS contract, it's like down here, right? So they only have to fund that enhanced amount of money for the people who are going to retire during the course of the contract. We've advanced that more than once with the company, but have gotten no traction on that. And regarding the pension and retirement, the pay rates are the most straightforward thing. Work rules, work rules are important because of what's going on with us right now. Scope, we know that there are some deals in scope that tenets that we have to get onto and hold on to, and we will. The one that's got the most moving parts is retirement, right? Because there's 5,290 retirement stories, and everyone's the most important story to that individual person. And so trying to find something that works for everyone and going forward for the future is important. We're philosophically on board to doing what's right, and you'll hear us say this right, what's in the best interest of the pilots, and that applies in all areas of the contract. We want to do what's fair for you. What's gone on, though, and this is not a dig at the former negotiating committee, part of that TA had the sunsetting is not the correct word. The closure of the pension plan, the legacy plan to future new hires. So what's gone on is the company has walked around for the last 2 years with that thing in their back pocket, thinking they have that. They've wanted that, I know, for at least 22 years because I've seen them ask for that. They wanted to put, Bob Kameny lost a bet to Scott Stratton when it came down to their retirement proposal when we were in 2004 or 5. They wanted to put the new hires on, back then was called a cash balance plan, which it was essentially, it was just tied to the T-bill rate. It wasn't a market-based one. And our R&I people had it figured out at 23 cents or something like that on the dollar. Bob handed Scott a $20 bill. We folded up our books and we walked out of the room. The company goes, "Aren't you going to take that to MEC?" We go, "No, we'll never ratify." They've been wanting to do this for 20 years. So it happened, right? It happened in the TA. But I'm going to tell you, if you want to look at it like in the sale of a house, the house was tentatively sold. It was sold way too cheap. And they've been walking around like they think that, I guarantee you probably after they lost, they've had to go answer to their people that they answer to, that what they've represented, that it was a locked deal, is not a locked deal. And the sale of their house fell through, the financing fell through. It's like in the sim, new day, new jet, you're dealing with us now. And we're going to do what's right for you. I'm not saying we're going to dig in and not yield to do and go only in this path or not in this path, because we understand what's going on. We understand, especially among the younger pilots, you might have a reason to doubt the company right now. Gee, why would that be, right? So if you doubt the company right now and you don't trust the company right now, then there's probably a reason why you would maybe want to separate your money from the company. Totally understand that line of thinking, right? I do. I understand that. I understand the value of a B fund. The way I got rolled into doing this stuff was in 1996 when I asked Mike Aiken, what are we going to do about a B fund? Because I came here because I was furloughed from American, and we had a B fund there with a 1% A plan, right? So we understand, right? There's a lot of moving parts. We are not dug in on one course of action. It's very fluid, and we'll get there. I'll tell you what else is running, whatever you want to call it, the Tony ticker or whatever, that APRP is going to be more than a little bit of walking around money. It's going to be a big part of the negotiation. But you've earned that. The pilots in this room, even the pilots that hired in 22, we were still dealing with COVID. Y'all did a lot to save the world. Mr. Smith said that. He was very much on record how we saved the world. You might have received a few emails thanking you for that, but you haven't been recognized for that financially. And that's our intention. Now, we understand totally, I've gone on way too long, that you're frustrated by the process. We understand that. We have every intention to get back with the NMB soon. We can't go in there, because I just explained to you why, we can't go in a vacuum and say, oh, we'll take $4.25 an hour. Just to get us to see if that'll get us a seat at the table. Because that's bargaining in the vacuum, and look what just happened last night. The IPA put their pay proposal on the table. So we're going to keep going. We understand that it's frustrating, right? I'm just tell you one of the things we looked at, or the NMB looked at when we presented our proposals, or our status meeting to them, is stability within the union. Everybody's got their God-given right, or their ALPA constitutional provided right, to do whatever they want to do. If whatever happens after this meeting goes on and there's a movement to change out personnel, well, maybe we're going to have to take notice of that and how that affects us going forward in bargaining. When you have things like that, you could end up with blocks being unrepresented for periods of time when we're bargaining. But again, it's your constitutional right to do it. That's what the great thing about America is, it's democracy. But we make our choices, and our choices make us. And that applies to everything in life and to where we are right here, right now. So we're going to continue on, continue doing what we're doing. We understand the frustration that you have experienced. It's our intention to our literal core is to fight for you on your behalf. And we're not just going to fight to fight. We're trying to, like I've said, Here's our charter. Our charter on the negotiating committee is to do the most good for the most number of people in this room. We're not going to succeed. We're going to have people that hate us. I'm just trying to minimize the people that hate me when we're done. And what I mean by that is, to us, we're going to represent you at the table. We're going to enter you into a deal that we know that will ratify and be a good deal, but more importantly, not enter into a bad deal. And sometimes this takes time to achieve that, right? What are we hung up in work rules right now? Well, revisions and extensions. And by the way, they're currently fine sticking a book with 4A2B and C. I think that's a fundamental problem. Our committee thinks that's a fundamental problem. But if the direction comes from the members to the MEC, end it. We'll take whatever. You know, we'll take that under advisement and talk to the MEC. But I will tell you, since what's happened at the NMB, our inbox has been overflowing. I know the reps have gotten a lot of emails. I'm not exaggerating. 99% of what we've received has been positive feedback, because you get emails like, thank you. This is the first time in 18 years I feel like somebody's representing us. Now, I'm not belittling. There's some people that are really hurting right now. I've talked to them on the phone. You got 7.5 FOs that have got very sub 4A1 guarantees that are having a hard time making ends meet. It's more, to me, that's morally wrong with what's going on. There's not a chance in the world that they're going to furlough. That stuff needs to get fixed. But all of that stuff needs to take time. If we're having a hard time getting our pilots to work because we don't have any more day flights, and we had to deal with commuter issues, we did. It took time. We've got stuff sitting out there that we believe that you'll like when you see the TA that deals with deviation banks, commuter protection, increased reserve call-outs in different domiciles, increased R24, real-time trip trading, things like that. So those sections aren't TA'd, but they're tracking in the right way. You know, we're tracking in the right way. We'll continue to do whatever the body directs us to do, because they're an extension of you. And we appreciate you hanging in there with us. We're going to continue to do what we think is in the best interest of the pilots to get you a very fair agreement.